Throughout the history of Path of Exile, for the most part, when GGG makes a league, they think, well, we need to design this knowing that it is going to go into the core game after the league is finished. And that has happened, with very few exceptions. The notable ones being Legacy League as well as Synthesis, which is, by the way, my favorite league of all time, and I'm really sad that it didn't come back, so GGG, when are we getting Synthesis? And then some people could also say that Tempest didn't make it into the game in its full, actual functioning form. It's kind of just, a prophecy that's also being removed now, so maybe it's not going to be in the game at all. And then we do have some content that has been removed from the game, such as the Perandus League, and we do have some content that is going to be removed from the game soon, which is Prophecy. However, in the list of like 15 or 20 or so leagues that GGG has put out, only having essentially 2 that didn't make it in is a pretty small amount. However, I do have suspicions that the Scourge League is not going to make it into the core game in any meaningful way. Now, when I first started thinking about this was when Tarky made a video a while back, it was probably a week or 2 ago now, about how GGG really wasn't communicating and we haven't gotten much info on the Scourge League in general. And this was coming right after they had told us that they would be much more upfront with communication, they'd be doing like mid-league interviews and things like that, and we haven't really gotten any of that. However, that's not to say that they haven't been, completely radio silent. We've gotten a bunch of events this December, which have all been pretty solid, but it just seems like Scourge is on the back burner, and instead they are going full force on working on 3.17. Now, the Scourge League itself has been a pretty divisive league. Typically, you're either loving the mechanic or you're hating the mechanic. Most of the people who love the mechanic are liking it because of the massive amount of quantity of items that drop, and there are also the magic find people who decide to play the game wrong and, just want to farm like tier 3 towers for their entire life, and that's fine if that's what you enjoy doing. But for those people, it works and synergizes extremely well. And then there's people like me who just happen to be playing like the one build that can function in Scourge extremely well and get a ton out of it. But the other side, and you could say that this is mostly due to lack of build viability in the current league, doesn't really like the mechanic because they find it either kind of too difficult, it just seems like it does way too much damage, or it's not really that profitable for them. So with Scourge getting such a mixed review, you could take it or leave it, it doesn't really seem like a league that would have too much trouble just kind of being pushed off to the side. And since we've gotten very few updates to the actual mechanic of Scourge, which is the scourging of items, which most people at this point don't even really seem to like. It's okay for like the mass scourging of uniques, it enables a way to get easy 6 links with the new currency, and it also does enable us to run scourged maps. But that's about it. There haven't really been any changes, and the mechanic itself is, I'm gonna be honest, pretty lackluster. And that is the main reason why I took a break this league. I have been kind of building up towards taking a break from the game in general, just for a little bit of time, stop streaming, stop making content, just to give myself a refresh, and this league seemed to be the time to do it. Now, I have already kind of eased back into content. You might have seen me over at twitch.tv/bigduts, which you should go follow, by the way. I have been doing Endless Delve, and because I'm not much of a Gauntlet boy, I am going to be giving the new Last Epoch patch a try. From what I've heard, the Druid is getting completely revamped, and that's most likely what I'm going to be playing. And on top of that, crafting in Last Epoch is getting an overhaul. So if you're watching this video around the time it came out, Nexus.gg has a sale on Last Epoch. You can get, I think it's 15% off, and you can help support the channel by using the link down below. They just give you a Steam key that you can use on your Steam account. So if you're gonna buy Last Epoch anyways, and you wanna help support the channel, feel free to use my Nexus shop. Typically when GGG makes a league, the way that I feel that they do it is that they design a league, they make it cool, they make it fun, they try to make it like interactive and enjoyable, and then typically they will add something on to the end of it. Think like Delirium. In no way does it feel like cluster jewels make sense in Delirium. They just kind of were like, well, we want to put this thing in the game, so we're going to tack it onto this league, right? That's the way that I feel that GGG typically does these kinds of things. However, for Scourge League, it almost feels like they did the opposite. It seems like the goal that they went in with is that they wanted to change the corruption mechanic in general. They felt that the idea that corrupted items were corrupted and you couldn't do anything to them ever again didn't really fit with what they wanted, so they made the corrupted currency. Now, I personally like the idea of the corrupted currency. It makes it so that corrupted items can't really be easily improved further, but you can kind of like gamble on them and see if you can get some, crazy things to happen. The main one being these Tainted Orbs of Fusing. These are extremely powerful. It basically makes any unique chess piece almost free to 6 link, but there's a variety of other currencies and such as well. I think that GGG's goal was they wanted to make these currencies and then they wanted to just tack a league on to the end. They needed to make some kind of league that would go along with it. Because the League fits so well with the scourged and tainted currency type idea, I do believe that they were made together, and I do believe that the currency came first before the League itself. Hey there, the YouTube algorithm is endlessly hungry, and if you're enjoying this content, or maybe it's just helping you out, make sure to like the video, and if you want to see more content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that these videos are show right up in your feed. So that makes me think that GGG is not that tied to the Scourge mechanic. Now, talking about the actual scourging mechanic of the Blood Crucible and all of these skill points and everything, these honestly feel like they were kind of useless. I didn't really like anything about this. It didn't really feel like I was making any choices. These all just feel like obvious upgrades that you're going to take no matter what, and when you fill it all the way up, you're done, and it's just the better version of the mechanic. I really didn't like this. I thought this was going to be some kind of skill tree where we choose the things that were important, and we couldn't just get everything eventually. I thought that's the way it was going to be, but it turns out that it's not. Now for the actual Crucible, the scourging of items, I'm gonna be real honest here, I think it's terrible. I don't think it's designed well at all. I don't think there was much thought put into this portion of it. I feel like the scourging of items is most of the time useless and the rest of the time just actually negative. It is insanely rare to be able to get any even worthwhile corruptions on these items. Most of the time when you get a scourged item, you just get some kind of garbage or you get nothing, right? I mean, most of the time that I've scourged any of these kinds of gear, I get like, oh yeah, maximum energy shield, but you also recover energy shield slower. It's like, okay, so that's useless, right? It does almost nothing for me. And GGG hasn't really said anything about wanting to improve this mechanic in any meaningful way. If you go and look at some of the rates of the actual good modifiers for spawning, it's like 1 in tens of thousands to get good modifiers to spawn on these scourged items. And when they were talking about, oh, they're gonna be better than leveling items, not really. The most that I used the scourge mechanic for leveling items was to turn white rings into yellow rings very early on so that I could use them for the wand recipes. That's pretty much all I used. Besides that, the scourged items have been terrible. And that's not even talking about the scourged items that drop on the ground pre-scourged. I think they did some modifications to that, but that was around the time when I was quitting the League anyways. But let's be real, 95% plus of the Scourge items that drop on the ground are actual garbage. They're not even worth seeing. To the point where I'm pretty sure I turned Scourged items off completely in my filter on the ground. Now that's talking about just generic items. However, I think the one thing from Scourge that will actually make it through, and this is going to be my bet on how the Scourge mechanic is going to potentially exist in some small fashion in the future, is I think that scourged maps are going to stick around. Now, as I said before, I felt that the way that the mechanic works is that I think that GGG made the currency, they want the currency to be in the game, and they needed some way to actually dish it out. What I think is there's going to be some way that we are going to be able to continuously scourge maps or obtain scourged maps, and that's going to be the main source of dropping the currency, and I think that's going to be the only remnants of Scourge that we have in the game. It's just going to be the Scourge maps. Now, these maps do need a little bit more work, but they're actually pretty fun. They drop a lot of good loot. They're kind of interesting, and you see bosses significantly more often. For the most part, I know a lot of people played the entirety of the time that they were going to play the League, and they saw maybe one Scourge boss the entire time, which is kind of unfortunate. I've always kind of disliked the fact that during the main League itself, GGG tends to make it so that the bosses and the cool stuff only shows up like sometimes. Like if you've played PoE long enough to remember Blight League, blighted maps dropped so infrequently in Blight League, it was actually like impressive when you found them. Blighted maps drop like almost 5 to 10 times as often nowadays as they did in the actual Blighted League itself. I wish the bosses would have shown up a little bit more and we could have seen these mechanics a little bit more often, but what can you do? That's kind of just the way that GGG does things. Now, there is an alternative world where they just decide to tack on the Scourged currency in some other manner, like they're just going to be like, oh, well, you get it in like Vol side zones or something like that. I hope that's not the way they go about it. I do hope that they just give us some way to maintain these Scourged maps. Either make it so that you are just using this Blood Crucible and you suck the juice out of, I don't know, normal mobs. Who cares? Like, the Ray class is already cursed as it is. But I really just don't think that with all of the information that they've given us, that the Scourge mechanic is going to make it into the game in any meaningful way. Now, I would like to be wrong. I actually enjoy the Scourge mechanic, and I think it would be cool as having like a mod on maps or something like that. I just don't really think that that's going to be the case. And that is going to be it for the video. So if you have some other idea on how you think that the Scourge mechanic's actually going to function, if you think that it's going to work in some alternative way to what I think that it's going to happen, let me know down in the comments. I'd be happy to read some of them and see what kind of cool ideas that you guys have. I just don't really feel like GGG is too invested in keeping the Scourge mechanic around. I think they're much more focused on getting things like 3.17, Ultimatum back into the game, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, who knows. I would just like to at least see Scourge maps in the game going forward. So remember, boys, if you enjoyed the content or it helped you out in any way, make sure that you like the video, and also if you want to see more content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that those videos will show right up in your feed. And also, stay safe out there in Ray Class, and I'll see you guys in the next video.